So my name is Carla Watson, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. And I invite you into the conversation around something called social entrepreneurship. Now, I welcome you into this conversation, whether you are a founder for yourself in a particular organization, or if you're just curious about how you can add meaning and impact into the lives around you. I've asked these wonderful people to stand and view this presentation differently to you, to allow their different interpretation of this experience to be shared as you do in entrepreneurship. Clicky. A social entrepreneur, let's just begin with the concept, is someone who develops a business or goal or organization with the intention of creating social change. Now, this sounds nice, right? However, in social entrepreneurship, there is a distinct difference between social entrepreneurship and the traditional form of entrepreneurship. So let me explain a slight difference. Entrepreneurship focuses on profits, dare I say it, financial forecasts, easily quantifiable ideas and movements that can be measured. Social entrepreneurship is messy, it's qualitative. Why? Because it deals with social change, people, mindsets, things that are challenging. It doesn't quite make sense as easily as it does in the entrepreneurship space. However, there are two things that I want you to take away from something a social entrepreneur does and has and embraces, is patience and time. Things in social entrepreneurship does not happen quickly. If it did, more people would be solving all the issues in the world by yesterday. Things take time for mindset and people to change. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in the work that I do. So I work for an organization, or rather I work with an organization called the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship. And what we do is we believe over time and with patience, we're going to disrupt and transform the education sector in this country. Just like that. But over time. If it was easy, we might just give everyone laptops and pretend now it's done. But instead, we believe in developing a program and a thought process that is going to be sustainable over time. Now, this image, I believe, resonates with almost everyone in the room. This is the scenario where you are sitting around the dinner table or at a pub or whichever, and you're having a conversation about some pressing social issue, gender politics, gender equity, women's rights, world hunger, whatever. And you're sitting there and you go, I got it. Mama, I fixed it. I can solve the world's most pressing issues with an app or with this or with whatever idea that I believe I'm going to change the world with. And you run up that ladder and you look into the future and there is social harmony. Everyone has enough. It is equitable and it's the world that we believe and should have immediately. However, while you're on top of that ladder, you look down and your shoelaces are untied. And because your shoelaces are untied, you can't stay up on that ladder and you've got to come back down. The original title for this talk, ladies and gentlemen, was How to Tie Your Shoelaces. Because in social entrepreneurship, this is the most important step before you can scale that ladder. You have to be aware of where you are and who you are in relation to what is meaningful for you before you can get to that beautiful, utopian, social harmonious place that we all definitely want to add to the world. So my challenge to you is you're not going to hear from me solutions about how to fix the world. If I had them, I would have done them already. I'm also not going to talk to you about these wonderful case studies of people with millions of dollars at their resources to solve pressing issues. Instead, I want to talk to you about how to tie your shoelaces, how to take that first step before adding impact to the world and communities around you. Because that's what kind of matters in this world, in my opinion. This is a three-pronged statement that often shapes all of my decisions, whether it's about out-changing the world or whether it's about what to do on the weekend. It's by Theodore Roosevelt. Do what you can, with what you have, where you are. And I want to ground the concept of social entrepreneurship in your context as a university graduate or university student. Because often we want to save the world by tomorrow and forget that we need to do what we can with what you have where you are right now. So the first point is do what you can. Ladies and gentlemen, your first and primary responsibility is to pass and to walk across that stage and get clapped on the head. That's your first priority. Before you can solve world hunger or the recycling issue in Woodstock, you need to pass your degree. So while you're well-intentioned and have all this desire for impact in the world, and in my case, transforming education in the country, I need to do what I can first. So in a full-time capacity, I'm with the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship. In the part-time capacity, I founded an organization to increase awareness in marginalized communities. And I stress the part-time capacity, because if I try and do both at 100%, both will fail. So go to MAM 1000 lectures, walk across that degree, and if you're not interested in your degree as a priority, then stop studying. Don't waste your time, move on. And that's often not popular, but it's the truth. Do what you can with what you have. Now, often Instagram and the world tells us we need to look perfect and have the whole thing planned, right? Since I'm a social entrepreneur now, I need business cards. Since I'm a social entrepreneur now, I need a MacBook because I can't quite work on a Windows anymore. Nonsense. If you really have a passion, and we're going to get to passion in a bit, you do what you can with what you've got. And it's something as simple as what's on the screen. The more resourceful you are, the more focused you are on what it is you want to do, it doesn't quite matter what you have around you at that stage. This one is an aspect that you have at your advantage that I'm a little bit jealous of, which is where you are. The largest public school in the country is about 1,500 to 1,800 students. You are in a network of tens of thousands. If your passion, which we're going to come to in a bit, is around you can't teach a hungry child and you want to increase certain aspects in schooling systems, the best people to ask are the ones sitting on the Sarah Bartman stairs, or the ones that are sitting next to you on your way to or sitting next to you on a jammy or on your way to a lecture. You have complete access to thousands of people's mindsets and thoughts that you can test ideas on, you can iterate and go back to testing and go back to iteration and find out what other people's passions are in the world around you. For me to access university students, I got to fill in forms. I got to sign things and get permission and whatnot. I can't just turn to the person next to me on the bus and go, well, what are your thoughts about women's rights? Or what are your thoughts about the fact that this university is a no-smoking space? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Would you like to see a change? Those are opportunities that you have about where you are right now. The 3 points: do what you can with what you have, where you are. But when you do this kind of thing, it's kind of lonely. It's kind of hard to go out on your own, whether you're a traditional entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur. But I want to introduce you to some of my friends. These are my 4 friends. They're 4 Ps, 4 friends, which walk with me on this journey. And even though my colleague is in the room, I plan to say this anyway, which is, the mornings are hard for me, guys. When I wake up, it is really tough for me to get going. And thankfully, he's kind enough to first wait until I've had my coffee before asking me my thoughts on the world. And I'll tell you why the mornings are hard for me as a social entrepreneur. It's because I have to muster these 4 Ps, these 4 friends. I have to bring them into my being in order to get on with the day. Being a social entrepreneur is such a responsibility that it weighs me down in the morning before I can get going. But don't get me wrong, once I'm up and running, I'm gone. And it's hard for me to sleep. But the mornings are tough because of how much pressure it takes to be true and honest to what I believe is meaningful in my life. So your first friend is this guy, passion. I'm not going to ask you what your passion is, I just want to talk to you a little bit about this friend. Passion, as you know with most of your friends, are emotionally volatile. Okay? 1 minute they're happy, they're up that ladder, they're looking at the world, and they are incredibly excited about the change they're going to make. Passion deflates and drops to the floor when it goes, into Google and sees, oh shit, it's been done before. Oh no, I need a partner, I need $100 million. Oh no, this is never going to happen. That's what passion does, up and down. It doesn't take away of how much you mean in it, how much you believe in it, but it's volatile, it goes up and down. But don't worry, it's got a best friend, this guy. Perseverance. This guy steps in front of passion and goes, you got this. Perseverance steps in front of passion and says, in fact, let me tell you a little bit of a story. You know when someone knocks on the door with a bit less than you, someone who knocks on the door is less than you, and they have 5 to 8 seconds to convince you to give them that 5 rand that you just said you didn't have. Elevator pitches are not a minute, as we heard earlier. They're 5 to 8 seconds of convincing someone about what it is that they believe in. That's perseverance. And they're going to keep knocking at your door until you answer and give them something. Perseverance believes as much as in passion as it believes in itself. And as a social entrepreneur, perseverance is when you stand up and you say, I believe the quality of teachers in this country needs to be reworked and improved. And someone says, but how can you be passionate about that when our climate change situation is a problem? And perseverance steps in front of them and says, I believe that teachers are the area that I need to improve the quality of. And this is often not an easy conversation because there's a buffet of issues for us to deal with, not only in this country, but in this world. And our social media and our technology and whatnot is galloping ahead of our desires. And our thing and our primary purpose is to be aware of this. And to introduce my third friend is be patient. Now, patience is not an easy one. Some of my students are here, and thank you for the support. They might describe me as a patient listener, a kind person who shows up in her entirety to be there for someone else. And I believe that's true. Except I'm not very patient with myself. And as a social entrepreneur, you need to be patient and you need to be aware of how much time it takes before you can move forward. Because for me, I want to be up that ladder solving everything, but every day I wake up and I realize I'm not ready yet, and how can I get there? And my fourth P for you is often one that we don't talk about that often. And in social entrepreneurship, this is almost a little bit of a swear word, because when you do good things, sometimes people believe you've got to do it for free. Now, if you want to volunteer, go to Shoko, go to Ubunia, do your thing, all right? And I respect that. But if you want to make an impact and a meaningful impact with your life and your time, I suggest you keep profit in mind. What you do with that profit is a different conversation. But when you attach a financial value to both your product or your service, and you ask someone else to attach value to your product or your service, you show up more. And your work has a higher chance of having higher integrity than something that you might just do in your free time. Another way of looking at profit is how you're going to redistribute your value. If you're not comfortable with the word profit, some of our meaningful millennials here are going, no, I just want to save the world. That's fine. But remember, the value that you add to your society is much more important than your good heart. Can anybody raise their hand who knows their why? Does anyone here know what the 5 whys method is? Excellent. Good. 5 whys comes from a design thinking process, which I've done, which is difficult, and we're going to do it together now, just now. But 5 whys, the process of 5 whys asks you to repeat the same question 5 times to dig deeper at what you might believe your purpose to be. If you just want to run profits as a traditional entrepreneur, that's easy, it's easy to measure, that's fine. Social entrepreneurship demands that you know your why, because your passion, your perseverance, your patience, and your profit can evaporate, and then you're left with nothing else but your why. So I'm going to share with you my 5 whys for the company I started. It was strangely one of the easiest things I'd ever written, which for me we'll get to now about how cool that is when you get to that, because then you find your why quite quickly. But sometimes when it's challenging, it means you've got a bit more that you need to distill, a bit more that you need to unpack in your life to find out what your meaning is and where it is that you believe you belong in terms of your contribution. Okay. The story behind this is a couple of months ago I was in Australia visiting family, and I walked into a bookstore in Melbourne called Hares and Hyenas. I don't know if anyone has heard of it. And it was an incredibly life-changing moment in that it was a whole bookstore. So think exclusive books, like at a large mall, just of queer literature. Now the discourse fails me here in terms of how we're going to talk about the LGBTQI and the long acronym. So forgive me for now, I'm just going to refer to it as queer, as the queer community. And being in that space was so transformational to be able to be completely recognized and seen in an entire bookstore. Not some small section in exclusive books where I'm checking to see who's looking, but the whole space. That I felt it would have been criminal not to bring something of that back home. So I launched For You and For Yours. And in that process, I did the 5 whys exercise, which I want to share with you now. I haven't memorized it, so I'm going to read off the screen. My first why. Why? Why do this thing? Because I think it would be cool to have more options of wedding cards on the market. You dig a bit further and you go, but why? Because when you are celebrated, you feel more valued and your sense of worth dramatically increases. Because being celebrated means you are seen, and being seen means you add value. 4. Because the more we are seen in the queer community, the more we break down feelings of isolation and fear. Now we land up on my fifth why. And it's a belief, because I believe no one should be scared to be themselves. Now this belief is very far away from a wedding card. This belief is very far away from a bookstore or any sort of tangible experience or thing that you can sell or hire out. Knowing your why is what propels you forward in what you need to do. And understanding your internal intrinsic belief system is what keeps you going when you've got 1,000 things to do and you kind of don't want to do it because the morning's been a bit hard. And I invite you to do this 5 whys exercise with me now. We're going to do it all together. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And we're reaching the end of the presentation, which I most likely galloped through. Close your eyes and keep them closed. And then I'm going to ask you to talk about, or to say to yourself out loud, what it is that means something to you. And as we say at the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship, what problem do you want to solve? So close your eyes, everyone, and say out loud, the problem I want to solve is... A little bit louder. Everyone has headphones on. A little bit louder. Why? Say it louder. Because. 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 And this one you start with I believe, nice and loudly. If this exercise is really difficult, that's okay. If you landed up on the 3rd why again, I don't know, hey? That's all right. If you galloped through it and you managed to get to your 5th reason or your belief as to what it is that you want to do and why, then hold on to it. And I encourage that you follow that through because you've distilled your passion for a reason. This is a conversation, ladies and gentlemen, in social entrepreneurship and in collaboration that shouldn't stop. But me, I'm much more of a practical person than I am high level. So while I can say it's all about collaboration and creating and connecting, I want to honor that with a bit more of a call to action, which is my contact detail is on the screen. And I want to close with an invitation, is to absorb what I've shared with you, be uncomfortable by it, because if you're comfortable, then there's a problem, and that needs to be solved. And reach out to me, and I guarantee you I will respond, and I'll meet with you for a coffee to have a conversation about where you are and where I can take you. Because this is how we really impact positively in our societies, is through conversation and practical application to be able to move us forward. So I'm going to close, but I'm going to invite our observers, our very patient standing observers, to come to the front and share with us a little bit about what they experienced from their perspective. Your experience of this. Because you were standing and you were outside.
You will get to tell what I
Oh no, you're right. Go ahead. Start with your name.
Oh, my name is Diketo. Well, what I observed is that with in the early stage of your presentation, I think a few people left. I don't know why is that. Maybe they didn't know why they are here. Also, one thing that was really major for me is when you said we should close our eyes. While I was observing, I couldn't close mine. So I noticed that a lot of people were not really saying. In the first while I was closing my eyes, and the second one I opened just so I could observe. As you were moving, people were keeping quiet. I don't know why. Maybe they're uncomfortable, which I suppose is good. If you're uncomfortable with your why, then yeah. Also, the third thing that I observed is people were nodding. They were like, yeah. So I guess, yeah.
Okay, hello. My name is Rufaro. I was outside and it was a bit uncomfortable because, you know, there's that noise from the outside and you're trying to concentrate on what's going on here. It was a good experience in that I could concentrate on her because I kept looking at her and trying to comprehend as to what she was saying. And I learned a lot from it. As I was looking at everyone else in here, most people were actually nodding, showing they were learning something that they didn't know prior. Another thing is when we were told to close our eyes, like she said, I didn't know if I should close them or not because I'm meant to be looking at what's going on. So I closed them, then I thought, no, I'm meant to be looking at everyone else, and then I opened them. But at that point, when she was saying people should say their whys, some then just kept quiet, maybe because they're not sure where they want to be or they're not sure why. I'm not sure as well because I did mine and ended up at 3, which means I have to do something about it as well. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, but it was a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you for such kind words.